Welcome to the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software Podcast, brought to you by ETAS, a single source of cutting-edge software and hardware solutions that make automotive embedded systems safe, smart, secure, and sustainable. Each episode, we'll be joined by ETAS and industry experts to discuss how electrification, automation, and connectivity are impacting the automotive industry. Now, sit back and enjoy the discussion.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software from ETAS. In the past, we've been really focused on the aspects of the software-defined vehicle, and quite a bit of our content and discussions have been based around the technical side of things from a software perspective, security, time to market for software, and more. Today, we're taking a little bit of a broader perspective on the software-defined vehicle with our guest and the impact on the industry for the software-defined vehicle in the future from an iconic journalist in the automotive industry. This is Eric Cesa from ETAS. Our guest today is John McElroy from Autoline Detroit. John is an iconic automotive journalist. He's president of Blue Sky Productions, as well as a journalist, lecturer, commentator, entrepreneur. Not to mention, he's the creator of Autoline Daily, the industry's first webcast of news and analysis. He is the host of Autoline This Week, which is an Emmy award-winning TV program featuring automotive execs and journalists. He's also co-host of Autoline After Hours, a weekly live webcast focusing on new cars and automotive tech. If you listen to WWJ News Radio 950, he'll be on there 3 times a day. And he's also a contributor to WardsAutoblog.com. So John, welcome. That was a mouthful, man. I don't know how you keep all that stuff straight, and it seems like you're a really busy guy.
Yeah, Mark, but it's like my job is my hobby. My job is something I want to do. It's and right now in the industry, oh my gosh, this is crazy what's going on right now. And for me, it's the most exciting part of my career.
Yeah, so that's an excellent segue into what I really wanted to ask you first and foremost. So you've been around the industry for a long time, like myself. So you've seen a lot of things happen in the industry. But from my perspective, and maybe I'd like to get yours on this, the pace of change right now is really something that I haven't seen in my career. I'd love to get your take on what you see from a pace in the industry, the change that we're going through.
You're absolutely right. The pace of change is unprecedented in the industry. I keep telling everybody, you'd have to go back to like 1905 to find so much dramatic change going on in the industry. And that's when it was at its very birth, right? So there's a number of things that are driving it. The transition to electric cars, massive upheaval in the industry. You've got the potential of autonomous vehicles out there. You have intense competition from the Chinese, who have far lower costs. At the same time, we're seeing that the mature markets, the U.S., Europe, Japan, even South Korea, have absolutely hit their saturation point. I'm calling it peak auto. I don't think car sales are ever going to go much above where they are right now in those markets. And so all this is hitting at once, and automakers, especially the legacies, have got to change because they've got all these startups ripping at their heels who don't have to carry all these legacy programs and legacy issues with them, and who can be far bolder and daring and take more chances. And so, yeah, it's an incredible time in the industry.
So you mentioned that you don't see, let's say, what are we at, 17 million vehicles per year kind of production volumes, right?
Well, we're not even there. I mean, the industry would love in the U.S. to get back to 17 million. We're not going to hit 16 million this year.
Yeah, right.
And so, it sounds close. But when you take 1 million units of capacity, or 1 million units of sales, I should say, out, everybody feels it.
It's significant, right? Yeah. So this means that the business model for the OEs needs to change, right? Like they're looking at ways to say develop reoccurring revenue models instead of their only point of revenue generation being the sale of the vehicle and then not generating revenue past that point. This is, what is sort of enabling for us the software defined vehicle as a way of creating a reoccurring revenue stream for the OEs. So you have your pulse on the industry. What's your take on this?
I would agree with what you said, and I would add this to it. It's not just that SDVs, software-defined vehicles, provide a revenue generation that the industry never had before. It also can help them take out cost in the design and manufacturing process. Once you go to an SDV, as you know, far easier to start simulating everything. So now you can start iterating different designs, get to the right answer faster, not make as many prototypes, and slash costs that way. And then to your point, on top of that, an SDV makes it far easier to offer over-the-air updates that can unlock potential in the car that maybe you, as an automaker, present to the owner as a surprise and delight. Suddenly their car does things it never did before. Or if they want it bad enough, you can charge them for it, to your point. And then when you think beyond just taking a new car and doing these things, once that first owner sells it, and the second or third or fourth owner, there's a potential for them to start paying for these things as well. And that unlocks the entire car fleet for an automaker. And boy, that's never happened in the history of the industry.
No. I mean, and you see these models starting to be put in place. Like if you look at how Tesla does their autopilot, the vehicle itself is capable of autopilot, right? But it's you have to pay for it as I don't want to say afterthought, but after sale of the vehicle, right? And then it stays with the owner, not with the vehicle. So when you go to resell that vehicle, then the next owner needs to. So it's a different model than the OEs have had in place prior.
That's exactly right, and that's why they're so excited about this. Because, if you had gone back, let's just say a decade ago to make it safe, Tesla was thinking of it, certainly.
Yeah.
No one else was. And now they've awakened to the fact that, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if you figure out how to do this.
So we're in the trenches, so to speak. You get a completely different perspective, I think, than we get. What do you hear are the challenges in the industry to actually? I mean, you mentioned a minute ago Tesla recognized this, and then even before that, you mentioned that the legacy OEs have a lot of work to do, let's say, to recognize a software-defined vehicle. What are you hearing are the challenges from the traditional OEs and the supply base as they look to implement this?
Well, look, as you know, SDV, the name is in the title right there, software. And legacy automakers have not been good at software, as opposed to a Tesla, which is really kind of a software company that makes cars. And so they're all struggling with it. We've seen a number of automakers not be able to get anywhere. I don't want to cast aspersions, but Volkswagen has really struggled with its Cariad software unit, and it ran to Rivian. They're paying them $5 billion to get their design and zonal computing and everything that goes along with it. I've talked to a number of software experts who have told me it's going to take legacy automakers anywhere from 8 to 10 years to have a fully software-defined vehicle. And so what we're seeing right now is suppliers are jumping in on it, and they have software-defined, not vehicles, but parts and systems. And so it's very early days. All of this has got to get stitched together. And so that's why, we have not seen any of the legacies come out with a full SDV yet. They're probably, I don't know, halfway through the process, and they've been at it for about 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, it's a big change. I mean, to really implement what you kind of mentioned in the beginning around having a true CI/CD pipeline, where you're continuously deploying software, actually creating that a machine that actually does that is a lot of change for the traditional automaker. So when you're somebody like Tesla and you start from a green sheet, you're in a completely different, or even Rivian in this case, right? I mean, Rivian, if you look at the Volkswagen situation and Rivian, it's definitely an interesting play. Do you see other $5 billion for Rivian? That's quite a large investment in what Volkswagen is saying is really a software play, right?
That's right. That's right. Look, I think Volkswagen finally admitted to itself that it was going to take too long for it to iron out all the kinks, and it wanted something right now because new car programs were being delayed. But I can tell you, look at moves recently from General Motors and Ford, who have both set up big software operations where? In Silicon Valley. Where's Tesla? Silicon Valley. Where is Rivian doing all its software coding? Silicon Valley. This move to SDV is going to happen in the tech hubs like the Valley. It's not going to be in Detroit or Stuttgart or Tokyo.
That's an interesting take. You and I are both sitting in Detroit right now, somewhere in Detroit, right?
Right.
I think that it's an interesting paradigm because I think the Valley offers speed, right? Which is what the auto industry is looking for right now. But I think what Detroit offers, or let's say the traditional side offers, is experience, right? And so how do you see the industry coping with this, I guess, is what my question is.
Yeah, well, look, Detroit, Stuttgart, Tokyo, the legacy places, they're not going to go away. I mean, they're still extremely good at designing entire vehicles, building them at scale, and selling them, by the millions. But, with the software-defined vehicle, this has not been in their wheelhouse. And they've tried to do it internally and recognized it's very hard to recruit the talent for them that they really need. And, so most of them have, I shouldn't say most of them, but, that's why there's so much focus on Silicon Valley. And, I mentioned that in the U.S., Waterloo in Canada is another great place. Tel Aviv in Israel is another great place. Various places in China, Shenzhen especially. That's where this real heavy-duty software activity is going to take place. There will still be plenty of software coding happening in Detroit, but it will be more on a component level, not on a total systems level.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yeah, but you're definitely right. If you look at, GM, Ford, they're definitely pushing or growing organizations in the Valley, right? It's an interesting shift in dynamic. At least I feel at my level in my conversations in the industry. What kind of conversations are you having around that kind of shift in the industry?
Well, it's difficult for these car companies because the top coders in the Valley are very expensive. What these car companies and suppliers would prefer to do is outsource it to low-cost countries. India. I even know one supplier that's hired a bunch of coders in Cairo, Egypt. They're all looking for the lowest cost possible. But the best software people I know say that's the complete wrong way to do it. What you've got to focus on is value, not cost. And so what one top programmer told me is this: look, you go to the Valley, you hire a small group of software studs. You pay them each $1 million. And what they're going to do is turn over a turnkey solution to you on time and on budget. And that's the way to move things fast. Get the best people, even if you got to pay them top dollar. Because I hear horror stories of all this low-cost offshoring that, you get stuff back and it needs a lot of work or other things have got to be integrated and you want a turnkey solution.
That's very interesting. You definitely see a lot of outsourcing happening to low-cost countries. Egypt, Morocco, Brazil. All of this is going to be driven by KPIs, right? But do they have is the traditional auto industry? Because I think what you just mentioned about hire 10 studs and put them, lock them in a room and let them go. I mean, I think this is similar to maybe what Rivian and what some of the Tesla and some of the new companies are doing, right? Have you heard that the traditional auto industry sort of changing the KPIs that drive them in order to really enable this?
Well, there's a difference between obviously automakers and their suppliers. If you're trying to do a software-defined component, it's a whole lot easier than trying to do a software-defined vehicle.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine on the component level, you may well find that offshoring to a low-cost country is a good solution. But I think if you're trying to do a total systems approach, I think it gets extraordinarily complicated. And that's where I think you're better off with a tight-knit team of the best that you can possibly find. All working together, one room, right? Not scattered all around the world trying to communicate when you get into language and time zone issues.
Language, time zone, technology issues with trying to get, teams. I think people are much more efficient. My experience has been people are much more efficient when they're together than being, remote. I think, like you just said. So.
Yeah, look, if you're in the ideation phase, if you're in the creativity phase, the brainstorming phase, you want people physically together.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, here's something that's already been done, but we need to clean it up a bit, okay, get somebody remote to do that. But when you're really trying to put an entire system together from scratch, I think it goes way faster and better if everyone's physically together.
So how do you think the auto industry enables this then?
Well, just like we're seeing, go set up an operation in Silicon Valley, or run to somebody who's already done it and buy it from them, like Volkswagen did with Rivian.
Yeah. Interesting. What you're describing to me is sort of what I think GM has done with Cruise, right? In the Valley, right? I mean, this was at a high level, to me, it was an incubator, a technology incubator that what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, GM recognized that autonomy could be a game changer for the industry. Electric cars don't excite me too much. I mean, they do, but all that does is it changes the way you get power to the wheels. Yeah. Autonomy changes how you use a car. I personally believe when we get to fully autonomous vehicles, I believe that will happen. It's going to be as transformative to society, have as big of an impact on society as when the first horseless carriages arrived over 120 years ago. And so GM recognized, we think this could be a really good long-term play. And how do you get going fast? Go out and buy somebody who's already done a lot of the groundwork. So they ran out and bought Cruise, and they've been struggling with it. Everybody is going, fully autonomous is not easy.
No.
And what we found is when, the first 98%, not too hard to do. That last 2%, oh my God, it's really, really difficult to be able to say, yes, this car is safe in all kinds of edge cases or corner cases or operating domain design situations. Hard to do. So, GM saved a bunch of time by going out and buying it. Remember, Volkswagen and Ford teamed together and bought a startup as well, and then they gave up on it. So this is not easy to do. But you look at your risk analysis. You don't want to lose a lot of money and have it fail. But if you can afford to lose that money, the payoff could be massive. It could be transformative for your company.
Yeah, I agree. What are you hearing from your industry contacts around, when we really will see, level 4 type autonomy?
Well, we're already seeing it, but it's not ubiquitous. You can't go to a car dealership and buy a car with level 4 autonomy. But you can go to cities like San Francisco or Houston or Phoenix and
And use
others and use fully autonomous vehicles, no driver in the car whatsoever. One of my brother's sons lives in Phoenix. He uses Waymo everywhere. When my brother went and his wife went to Phoenix, they never used Uber, they never used taxis, they used Waymo autonomous vehicles. So it's already there, and you're just going to start to see this spread to more cities over the next few years.
Yeah. When do you think you see it on the open road in a non confined area?
Yeah. Well, look. Right now, the technology dictates that it's got to be in a geofenced area.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be mapped. 3D digital mapping has got to be there. I make the analogy to cell phones. When cell phones first came out, you could only use them in downtown business districts of big cities. Then the next step is you could use them at the airports, the major airports. Then the next step was when you were driving from the downtown business districts to the airport, you could use your cell phone. Now you can use your cell phone anywhere. It's almost hard to find a dead spot anymore. And that's going to be the same analogy with autonomous cars. Right now, they're geofenced. But year after year, we're going to keep moving those geofence posts farther and farther apart until they stretch from sea to shining sea.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Which part of the industry do you see moving faster? Because I see, from my perspective, there's parts of the let's call it transportation industry that can better leverage fully autonomous vehicles. Like if you talk about heavy truck or something like this, I mean, where do you, what's your take on that?
Well, I would agree on long haul trucking. Where a truck spends almost all of its time on a freeway. There's no cross streets, there's no traffic lights, there's no pedestrians. They spend a great bulk of their time there. What's the number one problem with trucking companies? Horrific turnover with drivers. They're constantly struggling to get drivers who, by the way, are limited by how many hours that they can drive a day. Autonomy could solve a lot of issues right there. So fleet operators whose total focus is cost per mile, as soon as those lines cross where it's cheaper to have an autonomous truck over a human-driven truck, or maybe some sort of combination where you still have a driver on board, and that driver puts in their shift. I don't know what they can drive. 10 hours a day? I don't know the number off the top of my head.
10 or 12, I think it is, yeah.
Something like that. But maybe the driver goes and then takes a nap in the sleeper, knowing the full well that the truck's going to drive itself for a few hours. So, it'll probably start with some sort of combination. But like I said, once that cost per mile looks better with autonomy, you're going to see fleets adopted immediately.
You're very wise. Your comments, I agree with everything that your position on all of this stuff. You mentioned earlier that EVs. At the end of the day, we're talking about the propulsion system in the vehicle, right? And I think whether it's an internal combustion engine or it's a hybrid or it's a pure EV, is sort of irrelevant to the bigger picture and fully autonomous vehicles. But at maybe a one level below, you see a lot of pivoting and changing in the industry. A lot of companies were full bore forward on EVs, and now they're taking a little bit different position. From my point of view, this is going to have some impact on the implementation of the software-defined vehicle, not maybe from a technology perspective, but from it costs to pivot, right? So the industry's got to pivot, and there's a cost to this pivot. how do you see that cost changing the trajectory of the software-defined vehicle?
Yeah, so I'm going to step back and look at a bigger picture. We're at peak auto. And it says they're not going to go up much more. People are already crying over the cost of cars. Prices took a massive jump during the COVID shutdowns and the chip shortage. Now, at this point where we're talking, we have very high interest rates in the United States. Affordability is a huge issue. The answer is not to decontent your car as an automaker to cut costs. The answer is not to beat up your suppliers and crush them on their prices. The answer is to design cost out of the car, to design cost out of the manufacturing process. And we've got to do it fast. It used to be that it took 4 years to develop a new car. Right now, the best are at 24 months or less. And so to be able to make sure that you're developing new products very quickly, but still meet all the safety requirements, still hit all the targets for quality and the like, SDV is a massive tool to being able to achieve that, where you can integrate different things far more easily in the digital world than you can in the physical world. You can eliminate all kinds of testing at the proving grounds. You can do that virtually. You can do all kinds of things in the virtual world, iterate that design, come up to the best one before you commit to hardware. And so it's both a cost and a speed to market enabler. And there's no two ways around it. Everybody in this industry is going to go to SDV.
Yeah, I mean, you already see Tesla leveraging this, right? I mean, if they find a more economical implementation of a system in a vehicle, they will change their system on the fly. And they will do software updates in real time, right? I mean, this is where the industry is headed. I completely agree with you.
That's right. Well, I mean, in the bad days of Detroit, they did a lot of design changes on the fly, and it always led to quality problems. And then under the Toyota production system and the Toyota product development system, everybody learned, well, you want to lock in your design a year before job one, so that everybody can get all the kinks worked out, all the suppliers are on board, everything has been checked out with production tooling, not testing, R&D tooling or prototype tooling. And so, the idea was you lock in before job one, a year before job one, and you don't make any changes until 2 years later when you do a refresh of the design. Tesla threw that model out the window. Tesla does design changes on the fly, just like you mentioned, and they have the confidence to do it because they can simulate these changes with their software-defined vehicle and say, okay, this is going to work, make it happen.
Yeah, it's all enabled through virtualization.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer. It is one of the most significant developments in the history of the industry.
Yeah.
I read it right up there with spark plugs and pneumatic tires.
Yeah, it's definitely so. I mean, I started my career, we were moving from, carburation to fuel engine, electronically controlled engines. And now we're talking about driving the car itself. It is so fun right now to be in the industry. The pace of change makes this time right now so fun. And I think you're right. Like, okay, we moved from horse-drawn carriages to automobiles, and now when we really recognize a fully autonomous vehicle, that's when you really see a profound impact on the day-to-day life of us ordinary people.
That's right. No, like I said, especially when you get to autonomy, is going to have a dramatic impact on society. Think about it. If you go back to 1900, there were no parking lots. There were no freeways. There were no traffic signs. There were no parking structures. There was no garages at houses. There might be carriage houses, but most people, certainly in cities, didn't even keep horses. So just think of how it changed the landscape. Same thing's going to happen again, but in a different way that we cannot fully imagine.
Yeah, it will. It will definitely be an interesting transition to live through, and I think it's not going to happen in the next couple of years, but it will definitely happen within our lifetimes.
For sure. And, as intense and as exciting and, as brutally competitive as it is right now, by the end of this decade, we're going to look back and go, yeah, it was kind of easy back then, because I guarantee you it's only going to get more intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, that's another good point. It's definitely a very competitive time right now in the industry. And my perspective, maybe I'd love to hear yours, is not everybody survives.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, there's too many car companies in the world with too many brands, with too many different models. There's so much excess capacity. It's not sustainable. There are definitely going to be winners, but there's going to be a lot of losers.
Yeah. Yeah. John, this has been awesome. This has been a treat for me to talk to you. I'm sure our listeners also enjoyed the conversation. Any closing thoughts from your side?
Well, look, I wish I was starting my career. Even when I talk about companies that are going to go out of business and disruption and all, this is the most exciting time in the industry, except maybe going back to 1905. And well, for any young people getting in, or even maybe not so young, the opportunities are enormous. You play your cards right, you can have a brilliant career.
Yeah. I am definitely looking forward to being part of playing in the game over the next decade or so. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Totally agree. Well, thanks, John.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and tune in for the next implementation, let's say, of ETAS's Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software podcast. Thanks again for joining. Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software podcast. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about automotive embedded systems and ETAS's capabilities, visit our website at ETAS. That's ETAS.com.